The phone rang at 9 p.m. on December 22nd, shattering my peaceful evening. I was curled up with hot chocolate, planning a quiet Christmas alone for the first time in years. Dave's voice crackled through the speaker, panic evident. "Joe, our rental flooded. The whole basement is underwater. Kelsey's freaking out, and Max is crying about Christmas being ruined." I closed my eyes, already knowing what was coming next. My brother had this way of dropping emergencies in my lap, and his wife Kelsey always seemed to be at the center of them. "Can we stay with you? Just for a few days? I know it's last minute, but—" "Of course," I said, though my stomach twisted. Kelsey and I had history, and not the good kind. 3 years ago, she'd started whispers about my mental state after our parents died. The way she watched me at family gatherings, like I was a puzzle she needed to solve, made my skin crawl. "You're a lifesaver, sis. We'll be there tomorrow evening." I hung up and stared at my Christmas tree. The ornaments my parents had collected over 40 years gleamed in the soft light. This house, their house, was supposed to be my sanctuary. Now it would become something else entirely. They arrived at sunset on December 23rd. Kelsey swept in first, designer luggage in tow, surveying my living room like a real estate agent. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled despite the supposed emergency, and she wore clothes that cost more than most people's rent. "Oh, Joe," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "This place hasn't changed at all. Still so traditional." Dave hauled in more bags while 9-year-old Max bounced around, excited despite everything. At least the kid still had joy in him. He wrapped his arms around my waist. "Aunt Joe, Mom said we get to have Christmas here like the old days." Kelsey's smile tightened. "Max, don't bother your aunt. She's probably tired." "He's not bothering me," I said, ruffling his dark hair. "Are you hungry? I made soup." "We already ate," Kelsey announced, though I noticed Max's hopeful expression. "I think we should get settled. Dave, bring the bags to the master bedroom." My master bedroom. I opened my mouth to suggest the guest room, but Dave was already headed upstairs. Kelsey followed, leaving me standing with Max in my own entryway, feeling like a stranger in my parents' house. Christmas Eve morning, I found Kelsey rearranging my kitchen. She'd moved my coffee maker, reorganized my spice rack, and hung her own dish towels on my hooks. The familiar routine of making breakfast felt foreign in my own space. "I hope you don't mind," she said without looking up. "I just like things organized efficiently." Max sat at the counter, quietly eating cereal. I decided to make sugar cookies, something Mom and I used to do every Christmas Eve. As I pulled out the mixer, Max perked up. "Can I help, Aunt Joe, please?" "Of course, sweetheart." Kelsey appeared instantly. "Max, you'll just make a mess. Go watch TV with your father." "Actually," I said carefully, "I'd love his help. We'll clean as we go." The tension crackled between us. Kelsey's jaw tightened, but she couldn't exactly forbid it without looking mean. She retreated to the living room, but I felt her eyes on us through the doorway. As Max and I measured flour, I remembered the last time Kelsey had questioned my judgment. It was at Dave's birthday party, when she'd whispered to relatives that I'd been struggling since our parents died. The way she studied me now felt the same, calculating, waiting. Christmas morning arrived, gray and cold. I woke early, as always, and padded downstairs to start coffee. The house felt different with people in it, less like home and more like a stage. Kelsey was already in the kitchen, humming softly as she arranged mugs on the counter. "Good morning," she chirped, unusually bright. "I thought I'd make everyone tea to start the day. Something special for Christmas." She'd laid out 4 mugs in a neat row. Steam rose from a kettle on the stove, and various tea bags sat nearby. Her movement seemed deliberate, almost rehearsed. "That's thoughtful," I said, though something felt off. Kelsey wasn't the tea-making type. She usually demanded service, not provided it. "This one's yours," she said, sliding a blue mug toward me. "Chamomile with honey. Perfect for relaxation." I set it aside without drinking, focusing instead on starting the coffee maker. Kelsey watched my every move, her smile never wavering. When Max thundered downstairs in his pajamas, eyes bright with Christmas excitement, she quickly moved the mugs around. "Presents first, then breakfast," Dave announced, appearing with bedhead and yesterday's clothes. Max grabbed the blue mug without thinking, taking a big gulp while heading toward the tree. Everything changed in seconds. Max took 3 steps toward the living room, then stopped. The mug slipped from his hands, shattering on the hardwood floor. He swayed, blinking slowly. "Mom?" His voice sounded thick, wrong. "I feel weird." Kelsey screamed. "What did you give him?" But I was already moving, catching Max as his knees buckled. His pupils were dilated and his skin felt clammy. The sweet smell on his breath made my stomach drop. Alcohol mixed with something medicinal. "Call 911, I ordered, lowering Max to the couch. "What's happening?" Dave demanded, suddenly alert. "Someone call an ambulance." I checked Max's pulse, fast but steady. He mumbled something incoherent, his head lolling against the cushions. Kelsey stood frozen, her face white as paper. "This is your fault," she whispered. "You did something to him." I ignored her, focusing on Max. "Stay awake, buddy. Talk to me. Tell me about your favorite Christmas present you're hoping for." The paramedics arrived within minutes, professional and calm. As they checked Max's vitals, one quietly asked, "Any medications in the house? Alcohol?" I explained about the tea, watching Kelsey hover nearby, wringing her hands and repeating, "I don't understand how this happened." The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. Max was stable but groggy, connected to monitors that beeped steadily in the sterile room. The doctor, a kind woman with graying hair, spoke in careful tones. "He's going to be fine, but there's alcohol in his system, along with what appears to be an antihistamine. Can you explain how a 9-year-old ingested these substances?" Dave ran his hands through his hair. "There must be some mistake." Kelsey jumped in immediately. "Doctor, his aunt has been struggling lately. Since her parents died, she's had some episodes. I'm worried she might have." "I didn't give him anything," I said firmly. "I made coffee. Kelsey made the tea." "I would never hurt Max." Kelsey's voice rose, tears streaming down her face. "You know I would never." A nurse stepped forward. "Ma'am, please keep your voice down. There are other patients." The doctor looked between us, clearly sensing the tension. "We'll need to file a report. Child Services will likely follow up. For now, Max needs rest." As the adults filed out to handle paperwork, I stayed behind watching Max sleep. His small face looked peaceful now, but I couldn't shake the image of him collapsing. That mug had been meant for me. 3 years earlier, autumn leaves had crunched under our feet as Dave and Kelsey visited for dinner. It was my first time hosting since our parents' funeral, and I'd wanted everything perfect. The table gleamed with Mom's china, and the smell of pot roast filled the house. "This is lovely, Joe," Dave had said, settling into Dad's old chair. "Mom would have loved seeing us here together." Kelsey smiled, but her eyes scanned the room like an appraiser. "It's so much space for one person. Aren't you lonely?" I'd stepped inside to get dessert, leaving them on the porch with their wine. Through the kitchen window, I heard Kelsey's voice drift inside. "Don't you think she's been different since your parents died? More fragile?" "What do you mean?" Her hands were shaking when she poured tea, and she never dates, never travels. She just sits in this big house, managing everything alone. Joe's always been independent. But what if something happens to her? What if she can't handle the responsibilities anymore? Maybe it's time someone helped her manage things. I'd frozen with the pie server in my hand, understanding flooding through me. The estate, the trust, the control I had over Dave's inheritance, until he proved himself responsible. Kelsey wanted access. When I returned with dessert, they were discussing football, but the seed had been planted. Back home from the hospital, I couldn't stop thinking about that blue mug. While Dave sat with Max and Kelsey paced the living room, making frantic phone calls, I slipped into the kitchen. The broken pieces had been swept up, but I found one shard under the counter. I lifted it to my nose and inhaled. The smell hit me immediately. Sweet and medicinal, like cough syrup mixed with something stronger. Not chamomile, not honey. This was deliberate. "What are you doing?" I turned to find Kelsey in the doorway, her face pale but determined, looking for answers. "The doctor said Max will be fine. Isn't that enough? He almost died, Kelsey, from something that was in his tea. Tea I made for everyone." Her voice rose defensively. "Why would I hurt my own son?" I studied her face, noting the way her hands trembled slightly. "That mug was meant for me, wasn't it?" For just a moment, her mask slipped. I saw something cold and calculating in her eyes before the tears returned. "I can't believe you'd accuse me, after everything I've done to help this family." "Help how?" "By trying to make sure you're okay. By worrying about you living alone in this big house, handling all those legal matters. By caring when no one else does. The words felt rehearsed, like she'd practiced them. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat in Dad's old study and really thought about our family's finances for the first time in months. When our parents died 5 years ago, they'd left us equal shares of everything. But Dave's portion came with strings attached. He could only access the full trust when he turned 35 and proved he could handle money responsibly. Until then, I managed it for him. At the time, it made sense. Dave had blown through his college fund on poker games and expensive cars. Our parents worried he'd squander his inheritance too. They'd trusted me to be the responsible one, the steady one. But what if Dave was declared more competent than me? What if I was deemed unfit to manage anything? I pulled out the trust documents, reading the fine print I'd skimmed years ago. There it was, buried in legal language. If the primary trustee was declared mentally incompetent or unfit, control would transfer to the secondary beneficiary's spouse upon marriage. Kelsey had married Dave 2 years ago. If something happened to me, she'd control everything. My hands shook as I closed the folder. The T wasn't random. It was a calculated move to make me appear unstable in front of my brother, maybe even dangerous around children. But it had backfired. Max had drunk it instead. The next morning, Dave announced they were leaving. Max needs to be in his own bed, he said, not meeting my eyes. And maybe we all need some space to process what happened. I helped them pack in silence. Kelsey moved efficiently, gathering her rearranged kitchen items and folding clothes with sharp, precise movements. She avoided looking at me directly. As they loaded the car, Max hugged me tight. "Thank you for taking care of me, Aunt Jo. I'm sorry Christmas got weird." "It's not your fault, sweetheart. None of it." Dave squeezed my shoulder. "We'll call you soon, okay? Once things settle down." But Kelsey was already in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead. As they drove away, I noticed she was typing furiously on her phone. That afternoon, I made a decision. I wasn't going to react emotionally. I wasn't going to confront anyone or make wild accusations. Instead, I was going to be smart. I was going to think 3 steps ahead, just like Dad taught me when we played chess. I called my lawyer and scheduled an appointment for after New Year's. Then I opened my laptop and started documenting everything I could remember from the past few years. Every strange comment, every calculated interaction, every time Kelsey had questioned my competence. If she wanted to play games with my family's future, I'd be ready. New Year's Eve came and went without an invitation from Dave and Kelsey. I spent it quietly, reading and organizing financial documents. But on January 2nd, Kelsey's social media told a different story. Her Instagram showed a perfect family celebration. Dave smiling over champagne, Max wearing a party hat, and a caption that read, "Blessed to start the new year with my boys. Sometimes the holidays don't go as planned, but family love conquers all. Gratitude, family first, #blessed. No mention of Christmas morning. No reference to the hospital, just a carefully curated image of happiness. I screenshot the post and saved it in a folder I'd started labeling documentation. If Kelsey wanted to pretend nothing happened, I'd let her. But I'd remember everything. 3 days later, Dave called. "How are you doing, sis?" "I'm fine. How's Max?" "Good as new. Kids bounce back, you know?" There was something forced in his cheerfulness, like he was reading from a script. "Dave, we should talk about what happened Christmas morning. Kelsey thinks it might have been some kind of accident. Maybe old medication got mixed up somehow. She feels terrible about it." "Old medication? You know, stuff left over from when Mom was sick. Maybe it was still in the house somewhere." My stomach clenched. They were creating a narrative, making me responsible for contaminated tea in my own home. 2 weeks into January, I got a call from my insurance company. "Miss Mercer, we received a request to access your life insurance policy details." The caller claimed to be updating emergency contacts. Ice flooded my veins. "I didn't request that. We thought it was suspicious. The phone number didn't match our records, and they couldn't verify your personal information. We wanted to confirm with you directly." I updated all my passwords that day and added additional security questions. Then I called my lawyer, moving our meeting up to the following week. "Someone's fishing," I told him during our appointment. "I need to protect myself legally." Mr. Harrison had handled our family's affairs for 20 years. He listened without judgment as I explained the Christmas incident and the insurance probe. When I finished, he leaned back in his leather chair. Document everything. Don't engage directly, but keep records. If someone's building a case against your competency, we need to build a stronger case for your stability. What kind of case? Financial responsibility, community involvement, medical clearance if necessary. We make it impossible for anyone to question your mental state or decision-making ability. I left his office with a checklist and a new sense of purpose. Kelsey wanted to play the long game. I could play it better. A week later, Kelsey showed up at my office. I worked as a financial advisor for a small but respected firm downtown, and seeing her in our lobby made my chest tighten. "Joe, I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by." My boss, Patricia, happened to be nearby, and I introduced them. Kelsey turned on her charm immediately, complimenting the office and asking thoughtful questions about our services. "Joe's so dedicated," she told Patricia. "Sometimes I worry she works too hard. She needs someone to remind her to take care of herself, you know?" "Joe's one of our most reliable advisors," Patricia replied carefully. "Oh, absolutely. I just mean since her parents died, she's been under so much pressure. Managing the estate, living alone in that big house. Sometimes she gets overwhelmed and doesn't realize she needs help." I watched Patricia's expression shift slightly, absorbing Kelsey's carefully planted seeds of doubt. After Kelsey left, Patricia lingered by my desk. "Everything okay at home?" "Everything's fine." Kelsey tends to worry unnecessarily. But I could see the question in Patricia's eyes. That afternoon I worked extra efficiently, double-checking every detail and staying late to finish a complex portfolio analysis. If Kelsey wanted to paint me as overwhelmed, I'd prove the opposite. That weekend, I ran into Sarah Martinez at the grocery store. Sarah and I had been close friends since college, but she'd grown distant after our parents died. Seeing her in the produce section brought back memories of Saturday morning coffee dates and late-night phone calls. "Joe, how are you?" We made small talk for a few minutes before I gathered courage to ask what had been bothering me for months. "Sarah, did I do something to upset you? We used to talk all the time." Her face flushed. "No, it's not that. I heard you were going through some things. Your sister-in-law mentioned you might need space." "What exactly did she say?" Sarah looked uncomfortable. "She said you were struggling with anxiety after losing your parents, that you were in therapy for some kind of addiction issue and didn't want people to know." My blood ran cold. I've never been in therapy for addiction. I barely drank. But she seemed so concerned about you. She said she was trying to help your brother understand what you were going through. I managed to keep my voice steady. "Sarah, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm doing well. I'd love to catch up properly if you have time." We exchanged numbers again, but I could see the confusion in her eyes. How many other people had Kelsey fed these lies to? February passed quietly. I threw myself into work, volunteered at the local animal shelter, and maintained a calm, organized routine. But I noticed Kelsey's attempts to contact me becoming more frequent and increasingly apologetic. Text messages arrived at odd hours, "Thinking of you and hoping we can move past Christmas." "Dave misses talking to you." "Max asks about Aunt Jo all the time." I responded politely but briefly, never engaging in lengthy conversations. My lawyer had advised me to remain cordial but distant, nothing that could be interpreted as hostile or unstable. But I could sense Kelsey's growing frustration. Her messages became more pointed. "I'm worried about you isolating yourself. Family should stick together during difficult times. Sometimes pride gets in the way of accepting help." The shift in tone told me everything I needed to know. She was losing control of the narrative she'd been building. My calm responses frustrated her because she couldn't point to them as evidence of instability. In early March, she tried a different approach. "I think we should all sit down and talk. Clear the air." "Dave agrees." I finally responded with more than a few words. "I appreciate the thought, but I'm doing well and prefer to focus on moving forward positively." My phone stayed silent for 3 days after that. In mid-March, I decided to extend an olive branch. I invited Dave, Kelsey, and Max for Sunday brunch, keeping my tone light and friendly. "I'm making Mom's famous pancakes," I told Dave. Max loved them last time. They arrived cautiously, as if expecting a trap, but I kept everything warm and normal, asking about Max's school and Dave's work. Over coffee, I casually mentioned something I'd been planning for weeks. I'm updating my will. Just responsible adult stuff, you know? Making sure everything's organized properly. Kelsey's fork paused halfway to her mouth. That seems kind of morbid for someone your age. Actually, it's smart, Dave said. I should probably do the same. The lawyer says it's good to review these things every few years, I continued, especially when your circumstances change. I didn't elaborate on what circumstances I meant, but I watched Kelsey's face carefully. A muscle twitched in her jaw, and she set down her fork entirely. What kind of changes? She asked, trying to sound casual. Oh, just life stuff. Making sure the right people have access to the right things at the right times. The conversation moved on, but Kelsey remained quiet for the rest of the meal. As they prepared to leave, I hugged Max extra tight and told him he could visit anytime. 2 days later, I got an unexpected visit at home. A woman in a professional blazer stood on my doorstep with a clipboard and an official-looking badge. Miss Mercer? I'm Lisa Chen from Social Services. We received a report of concern about your well-being and wanted to check in. My heart pounded, but I invited her in calmly. Of course, can I ask what kind of concern? Someone reported that you might be experiencing mental health struggles that could affect your safety or decision-making abilities. We sat in my tidy living room while she asked gentle questions about my daily routine, support system, and emotional state. I answered honestly, mentioning my work, volunteer activities, and regular checkups with my doctor. Your home is very well maintained, she noted, looking around, and you seem quite stable and articulate. I am. I'm curious who made this report. I can't share that information, but I can tell you that we take all reports seriously. Sometimes people call because they genuinely care, but don't understand how to help appropriately. After she left, I called my lawyer immediately. Someone reported me to social services. Expected, Mr. Harrison said grimly. We'll document this visit and your clean bill of health. Make sure your doctor has recent records showing normal mental health status. That evening, I scheduled a complete physical and mental health screening with my physician. If someone wanted to question my competency, I'd have medical proof to the contrary. A week later, Mr. Harrison called with interesting news. I filed a protective inquiry about potential harassment using false reports. The investigator is looking into the origin of that social services call. What does that mean? If someone is making fraudulent reports about your mental health, it's actually a form of harassment. The investigator will trace the call and determine if it was made in good faith. 3 days later, he called again. The tip came from a burner phone, but they traced it to a cell tower near your sister-in-law's workplace. Same area, same time she would have been at work. I felt a grim satisfaction. Kelsey was getting sloppy, leaving digital breadcrumbs that led back to her. But I also realized she was escalating her efforts. The social services call meant she was running out of patience. What's our next step? I asked. We continue building your case for competency and stability. Meanwhile, we document every attempt to undermine you. Eventually, the pattern will be undeniable. That night, I updated my documentation file with the social services visit and the investigation results. The folder was getting thick, but each piece of evidence made me feel stronger rather than more paranoid. In early April, Dave called me, sounding stressed. Joe, I need to talk to someone. Can I come over? He arrived an hour later, looking haggard. We sat on the back porch, where we used to talk as kids, and for a moment, he seemed like my little brother again, instead of Kelsey's husband. She threw a glass at me last night. He set down my coffee cup. What happened? We were arguing about money. She wants me to ask you about accessing more of the trust early. When I said no, she lost it completely, started screaming about how you control everything, and I'm too weak to stand up to my own sister. Are you okay? Physically, yeah. But Joe, I'm starting to see things differently. The way she talks about you, the things she says, it doesn't match the sister I know. Relief flooded through me, but I kept my voice neutral. What do you want to do? I don't know yet. But I needed you to know that I don't believe the things she's been saying. You're not unstable or incompetent. You're the most solid person I know. We talked for 2 more hours. I didn't mention the Christmas tea or my suspicions about Kelsey's other schemes. Instead, I just listened as my brother worked through his doubts about his marriage. The next week, Mr. Harrison presented me with a comprehensive folder. "This is your protection portfolio," he explained. "Medical clearance, financial competency records, character references, employment history, and documentation of harassment attempts." The file was impressive. 30 pages of evidence that I was mentally sound, financially responsible, and being systematically undermined by someone with clear motives. "If anyone ever challenges your trustee status or tries to claim you're unfit to manage your affairs, this file will shut them down immediately," he said. "What about pressing charges against Kelsey?" "We could, but I recommend waiting. Let her make one more move. If she's desperate enough, she'll overreach and give us something even more concrete." He was right. Everything we had was circumstantial, even though the pattern was clear. We needed her to make a mistake that couldn't be explained away. 2 days later, that mistake came. Max's teacher called me directly, which surprised me. "Miss Mercer, I hope you don't mind, but Max has been asking to call you at school." When I asked why, he said something that concerned me. "What did he say?" "He told me he gets scared when his mom makes tea now. He asked if it was normal for adults to put medicine in drinks to make people sleepy." My blood ran cold. "Did he say anything else?" "He mentioned that his mom talks about you a lot, usually when she's upset. He seems to think you're in some kind of trouble, but he doesn't understand what kind. Thank you for calling me. Is Max okay?" "He's a resilient kid, but he's clearly processing some anxiety about family situations. I'm required to file a report when children express concerns about their safety at home." After I hung up, I called Mr. Harrison. "Kelsey's own son just gave us the evidence we need." "A teacher's report about a child's safety concerns carries significant weight," he agreed, "especially when it corroborates our pattern of suspicious behavior." That afternoon, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: hope. Not for revenge, but for resolution. Max deserved to feel safe, and Dave deserved to know the truth about his wife. Social services interviewed me first, then Kelsey. My interview was straightforward. I answered questions calmly, provided documentation, and explained my relationship with Max without mentioning my suspicions about his mother. But according to my lawyer's contacts, Kelsey's interview went differently. She fidgeted, contradicted herself about the Christmas incident, and became defensive when asked about her reports regarding my mental health. The agent noted that she seemed to have an unusual amount of information about your personal business for someone who claims to be concerned about your privacy. Mr. Harrison told me. "What happens now?" "They'll investigate further. But between the teacher's report, the pattern of false claims against you, and her inconsistent statements, the picture isn't favorable for her." A week later, Dave called. "Joe, social services wants to interview me about Christmas morning. What should I tell them?" "The truth. Just tell them exactly what you remember. Kelsey's been coaching me on what to say. She wants me to emphasize that you seemed stressed that day, that maybe you made a mistake with medication." "Dave, do you believe I would ever hurt Max?" A long pause. "No, I don't, and I'm tired of pretending I do." The story broke in our local paper's online edition. Local woman files for estate protection following harassment campaign. The article didn't name Kelsey directly, but anyone who knew our family could connect the dots. The journalist had done her homework, outlining the suspicious pattern of false reports, the Christmas incident that poisoned a child, and the clear financial motives behind the harassment. She'd even found Sarah Martinez, who confirmed that she'd been given false information about my supposed addiction issues. Within hours, the story was shared dozens of times on social media. People I barely knew reached out to offer support. My boss called to tell me the firm stood behind me completely. But the most important call came from Dave. "I read the article. Is all of this true?" "Yes." "Jesus, Joe, I'm so sorry. I should have seen it sooner." "You're seeing it now. That's what matters." "I'm filing for separation tomorrow, and I'm going to fight for full custody of Max." "Good. He needs to feel safe." That evening, I sat in Dad's study, and pulled out the folder of documentation I'd been building for months. It had grown from a few pages to a comprehensive case file. But more importantly, it had given me purpose during the hardest period of my life. 2 weeks later, the dominoes began falling quickly. Dave moved out and filed for separation. The custody hearing went smoothly when Kelsey's own actions became the focus. The Christmas poisoning, the false reports to social services, and her attempts to gain unauthorized access to family finances. Then came the news I'd been waiting for. Kelsey was caught trying to forge documents related to the family trust. She'd apparently attempted to create paperwork showing that I was mentally incompetent and that Dave needed immediate access to his full inheritance. She got desperate, Mr. Harrison explained. When the legal route didn't work, she tried to create fake documentation, but she used outdated letterhead from a law firm that closed last year. The forgery charges were serious. Combined with the pattern of harassment and the endangerment of her own child, Kelsey's carefully constructed image crumbled completely. Dave was awarded full custody of Max, with Kelsey getting only supervised visitation. The trust remained securely under my management, just as our parents had intended. But the best part was seeing Max smile again. He stayed with me for a week while Dave sorted out his new living situation, and we made pancakes every morning just like old times. Christmas came again, exactly 1 year after the morning that changed everything. Dave and Max arrived early, carrying bags of groceries and wearing matching Santa hats that made me laugh. "Aunt Jo?" Max bounded into my arms, taller now and missing a front tooth. "I brought you something special." He handed me a small wrapped box, his eyes bright with excitement. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a ceramic mug. But this wasn't just any mug. It was the same blue one from last Christmas, somehow repaired and glazed in shimmering gold along the crack lines. "I made it in art class," Max explained proudly. "The teacher said broken things can be more beautiful when they're fixed properly." A note was tucked inside. "Thanks for saving me. Love, Max." I hugged him tight, tears blurring my vision. Dave squeezed my shoulder, and for the first time in years, Christmas morning felt exactly like it should. Safe, warm, and full of love. We made pancakes together, drank coffee and juice from matching mugs, and opened presents by the tree our parents had picked out decades ago. Max chattered about school and friends while Dave talked about his new apartment and the cooking classes he'd started taking. "Next year," I said, watching Max arrange his new books under the tree. "We'll make this a tradition. Just us." "Just us," Dave agreed. "The way it should be." The best revenge, I'd learned, wasn't elaborate schemes or public humiliation. It was simply living well, protecting the people you love, and finding peace in your own home. Sometimes broken things really could be more beautiful when they were fixed properly.